How YouTube badasses? I am Sean Stoger, and this is Crazy Native Philosophy. I am highly reluctant to make today's video because I hate talking about myself. And today's video is called As I Was Born, My Background. So, yes, are you going to talk about yourself too? Okay. So I want to start off by being upfront about my identity right away. I claim descendancy, which is all you need in Lakota country for enrollment. I personally am not enrolled, and at this point in my life, I see no point in it. It has no effect on me being me or the way I live my life or me serving tribes to the best of my ability. I earn a paycheck and VA benefits, so I don't seek anything from my tribe or any other tribe other than connection to culture. Obviously, identity is one of the most heated and controversial topics in Indian country today, and even this brief statement that I just gave will likely spark an emotional reaction in some people. That is why I wanted to state mine immediately, because for as warm and loving as Indian country can be, it can be just as nasty and vicious. So I felt that this was very important to do right up front before getting into my personal background. I called this video As I Was Born because we are all born naked, which means we're all vulnerable and exposed. So now I'm about to tell you things that I haven't told my family, therapists, doctors, or even my closest friends. So I'm going to be open and honest about everything and 100% me. So this is me bearing my soul, and it's very scary. I always introduce myself as Lakota and German because I'm clearly mixed and I don't try to mislead anyone. I've traveled the state of Wisconsin and worked with all 12 tribes extensively for almost 20 years. So I challenge anyone to find someone in my state that will say I introduce myself otherwise. I have a good mix of, when I was growing up, I had a good mix of city and country life. Growing up, I was very sick as a child. In fact, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, and 3 doctors told my mom that I wouldn't live past the age of 6. So the amount of times I should have died over the course of my entire life is beyond counting. So I either have some seriously strong medicine, or I have like a ton of spirits watching out for me, or I just have like ridiculous crazy luck. But I am truly a cat with 1,000 lives. So I tried to stop doing so much dumb stuff, so I wouldn't make my ancestors work so hard to keep me alive. My mom took me to church once in my life to see if I would like it, and I really didn't. I went with my grandma three other times besides that, so 4 times in total. That doesn't count like weddings and funerals. I never read the Bible, so I am... Like, people find me to be like amazingly ignorant on Christianity. I really don't know Christianity at all. I was a really weird kid growing up. I was known for attaching ropes to stairs and pretending to climb those like Batman and Robin, or I always wanted to be lowered out of like 2nd or 3rd floor windows and like I was rappelling. I used to build like massive forts all over the place and go on these massive adventures. I really wasn't into sports so much. I played a little football here and there, but my favorite game was war. I absolutely loved to play war. And whether it was with like guns or swords and shields or snowball fights or fist fights, I just loved that kind of, I guess, adrenaline rush. And so as a kid, I had like a closet arsenal, which is kind of funny because, I barely own any guns now. I got in tons of fights when I was a kid. Punched my very first kid in the face when I was 7 years old, and right in front of a cop, no less. This other kid made my best friend cry. He hit him with a big stick, and I wasn't gonna let that stand, so I jacked that kid right in front of a cop. I got suspended 5 times in high school for fighting, and that doesn't count all the times outside of high school I got in fights. I got my ass kicked a lot until I went in the Army at 18, and then things started to change a little bit. Then, during my childhood, my 20s, I definitely felt the sting of being a disconnected native. Later in life, I felt very thankful that I was born in Madison because it forced me to build relationships in all 12 tribes in Wisconsin. And I really love living in Wisconsin's Indian country. When I wasn't serving my country in the military or law enforcement or security, I did my best to be an ally to those tribes and serve the tribes that I grew up with. I went through the public school system. I was involved with some Native groups here and there when I was a kid. I joined the Army at 18, went off to war, and then became a college freshman at 22. At 22, I walk into college and I have massive battles with PTSD. I have huge rage issues. I'm pretty much a functional alcoholic for approximately 4 years. And then, of course, I personally have identity issues at that time. And then I have the separation issues that many veterans have when they break from service and now are marooned on planet civilian. So my mom recommended that I go back to the blanket, right? Which means, start going through, learning my traditional ways and start attending ceremonies. And that would help me heal those internal battle scars. So my very first year on the UW-Madison campus, I thought I was the only Native on campus until I met this one young woman in a basement party. And then she took me around and she introduced me to all the other Native students. And luckily, most of those were older. And at the time, they were older. And so they started taking me to ceremonies, and I became obsessed with my culture. And that really started helping me internally in a lot of ways. So during that time, well, actually through most of my life, I've had many great mentors and teachers and elders. And I used to skip classes a lot to listen to them, or if we were in conversations or something. If I was having a conversation with an elder and I knew I had a class coming up, I would rather learn from that elder than go to class and learn whatever they were going to teach me. Or if we brought someone, the student organization on campus, if we brought someone to campus, I would rather spend the day with that person than go to class. So if you are a Native or non-Native student that I work with now and that is listening, don't do this. Don't be a dumbass like Sean was. Go to class, get your education, and I will hook you up with whoever you want to connect with. The elders I gravitated toward most were definitely medicine men. I felt like I understood them, but they definitely understood me. And at the time, the ones who I met were all combat veterans, so that really helped a lot. They really helped me start working on those internal scars and wounds that I had. And I really liked how they saw things and how they saw the universe. So I sang on the powwow drum for 7 years. I carried the Eagle staff for the Madison community for 7 years. And I was a firekeeper for Robert Lujan's sweat lodge, both behind his house and at Mauston Correctional for 7 years. But during that time, it wasn't all fun and games. Like I said, in those early years out of the Army, I was at war with those personal demons inside myself. Plus, I was trying to stay inside school. And to throw gasoline on the dumpster fire, that was Sean. There were many natives who tried to strike me down during that time. And I don't know if they were jealous about the attention I was getting from supporters and mentors, or if they were trying to punish me because I didn't know anything, But they would oftentimes, shame me in front of large crowds. Like if we sang on a drum and there'd be times there'd be 200 people out there, and someone would stand up and introduce us, and they'd go around and they'd be like, and Sean is trying to figure out who he is or something like that. And so And there were other times, we'd be mingling around the room and someone would be like, "Hey, Sean, this girl doesn't know anything about her culture, just like you." So I'd get embarrassed a lot in front of lots of people or shamed. Um, and there are other natives who just wouldn't flat out speak to me. I don't know if I was mixed or I was light skinned or I didn't know anything or what, but people just wouldn't speak to me for whatever reason. Some would smile to my face and totally accept me, and then as soon as my back was turned, they'd chop me down. there were some native girls who would be social to me during the daytime, but then at night my phone would be ringing and they'd be knocking on my door. So I used to say I was the best kept secret at UW Madison. But that's when I was younger and I had muscles, and now my phone's pretty quiet. So there were native dads who would tell me that I couldn't date their daughters because I wasn't native enough. There were native dads who tell me they didn't want me to date their daughters because I wasn't from their tribe. I had native moms beg me to date their daughters. Like I was this young guy in my early 20s, and I'd be at a grand entry in the powwow, and I'd be standing there with the Eagle staff, and all the other veterans would be like in their 40s at least, because they're all Vietnam or Korean or World War II veterans. And so I'm this young guy standing out there, and then I'd go sit on a drum and sing, and then I'm trying to learn my language, and then I'm obsessed with my culture, and then I'm going to ceremonies. And, native moms are like, "That's what I want for my daughter," right? But a lot of those hot native girls didn't want none of this, right? They want some res dog named Thug McNasty or something, right? So they don't want, they weren't having it. But some did, but if I did have a niche back in the day, I'd say it was native grandmas, but not like that, so at powwows there's a dance called a two-step, and it's a woman's choice dance. So the MC will call for a two-step, and then like all the native girls will swoop out of the stands and they'd scoop up all the drummers in the drum pit, and sometimes I get scooped up, but all of a sudden I get a tap and I look up and it's somebody's native grandma, right? And so you can't say no. So I get up and I go dance, and we'd be dancing around the arena, and I kind of like look over, and then I'd see them doing like this at their friends, and I'm like, oh my God, So I guess that's like my jam back in the day. But that's like my age now, so that's totally not old at all. Like what the hell, Anyway, I had many amazing people help me out, but I had lots of mean and ugly ones try to chop me down also. And that's life in Indian country, right? People are people. And I had a close friend who's Oneida, and his dad always just say, "I never met an Indian without a scar on his face," and I think we get those scars because we get those from other natives. So, the people I love most are native people, and the people who wounded me most are native people. And that's Indian country. So, professionally, I was in the Army a total of 4 times with breaks in service. I have about 14 and a half years total time. I'm a combat veteran. I'm not going to list all the schools and medals and all that BS crap. No one really cares. 200% disability rated right now by the VA. Might get up to 230. But the way the VA does math, it's only 100%. But total percentage. I was a federal law enforcement officer for the Department of Defense. I've done everything in security you can possibly imagine. I've been a bouncer in multiple nightclubs and bars and gentlemen's clubs. I've been a security contractor. I've been a security consultant. I've been an operations manager. 2010, I supervised all Camp Randall football stadium security, which meant I supervised over 300 security personnel per game. I've been a military and private investigator. I was emergency management director for an entire hospital and adjacent buildings. during the initial outbreak of the COVID pandemic. So I have over 80 disaster and emergency preparedness courses with FEMA. I've had more jobs and vehicles and places I've lived and girlfriends than I can possibly remember in my life. For odd jobs, I've done everything from like construction to being a waiter to bartender to taxi driver, personal trainer. I taught martial arts for over 20 years. I do have a 4th degree black belt in ninjutsu, but I am not a ninja. So right now I'll post on the screen my 4 certificates from Dr. Masaki Hatsumi, who was the Grand Master of Ninjutsu in Japan. I boxed for like the last 6 months of my first enlistment on the 101st Airborne boxing team. I did Muay Thai and Eskrima under the Inosanto Academy lineage for about 3 years. I did Kodokan Judo for about 2 years. I did ninjutsu, like I said, for about 4 to 5 days a week for about 11 years. I went through the police defensive tactics course twice. I've done Army combatives with my unit, but I never went through the school. And then, I played around with some jiu-jitsu and submission grappling, but no ranks there. And then played around with a bunch of other stuff here and there. I've taken a bunch of wilderness survival classes. I love tracking animals as a hobby. I've done training in executive protection, both private security details in wartime environments and low visibility, close protection work in urban operations. I've also done training and experience in physical security, site design, and analysis. So my two primary mentors, Rick Cliff and Robert Lujan, used to say they had a PhD in life. And so with all the stuff I've been through in my life, I like to say I'm working on my 3rd PhD. I also have a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with certificates in minors in American Indian Studies and management of nonprofit corporations. I was also president, vice president, and a brotherhood chairman of a fraternity while I was at UW-Madison, and served. I was in a bunch of different clubs too, like the judo club and the kendo club, and began serving tribes, being the interim University of Wisconsin-Madison Native American advisor, which was totally not for me. So I was really happy. It was a temporary gig. At the time I walked in, it was like a total dogfight on campus. And so I just am happy, when they hired, they were looking for master's degree candidates, and I only had a bachelor's degree. So that worked out fantastic for everybody. So, but now, campus climate's changed a lot. There are a lot of fantastic people working there. So, but yeah, that was great. So after that, I guess it went dark for a little while and then popped back on the grid for about 7 years later. And I became the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs Tribal Liaison. About a year and a half in, there was a change in state government, so I had a new boss named Secretary Mary Kolar. I introduced her to my federal counterpart, and his name was Peter Vicaire. And Peter, his office is in Minneapolis, but he served 78 tribes from Maine to Montana, and in 18 states. Secretary Kolar asked Peter right in front of me, actually. I was kind of shocked, well, how's Sean doing? And I thought, Peter's just going to say, well, Sean's doing okay. Sean's doing all right, But Peter goes, Sean's tip of the spear. There's no one in the country that's doing what Sean's doing. And I was blown away. So it turned out I was the best tribal liaison in the entire country. So I had statewide and national impact in that position, and I'm still the things I did in that position are still having impact to this day. I did that for about 4.5 years, but I ended up leaving just because I absolutely hate politics with a passion. So, any politics. I just don't want to hear about it. So right now I'm the University of Wisconsin Platteville and Baraboo tribal liaison. So my office is on the Baraboo campus. So I create Native programs on both campuses from scratch. I guess there were people before me, but when I walked in, there was really nothing. So I'm creating something from nothing. So I work with both Native and non-Native students, which, that next generation is my number one why for why I do this channel. I've never made a single dime off of Native people. My income comes from my paycheck, which has always been measly. When I was the Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs tribal liaison, I was the best in the country, but I was the third lowest paid in my state. So in the state of Wisconsin, there was 18 or 19 tribal liaisons, and I was the third lowest paid. The average pay was 25 grand more than I was making. So to feed my family, we existed off of commodities, or that's food that natives can get, and the Baraboo Food Bank. So I got really sick of that pretty quick, and so I took a second job on the weekends, working security in a hospital. And I worked 7 days a week for a year and a half straight without a single day off. And I did that so I could keep serving the 12 tribes of Wisconsin. So I don't know a lot of people that would do that, right? Most people would just go find a higher paying job, and that way they could have their weekends off. So they could watch football or go fishing or do whatever they want. But, my wife and kids were very proud that I sacrificed and was working so hard to serve Native people. Right now, I make the exact same amount as a tribal liaison that I did 8 years ago. And I guess the American mindset is that there's a problem with that, right? Like I should be climbing some kind of ladder or progress, forward progression, achievement, individual, whatever. And I don't know what I would need really. I mean, of course, extra money is always nice, but I really don't know what I really need a lot of extra money for. I love what I do. I get out of bed every single day, and I absolutely love going to work. So I don't know what I would need that money for. My first 6 months on this job, I had 7 job offers. The last one I interviewed 3 times. They offered me $180,000, which is basically 3.5 times what I make right now. And I turned them down. That was to be a tribal liaison on a national scale. I turned them down so I could keep serving the tribes of Wisconsin. So right now I'm working to become financially independent, which just means, paying off my house, paying off my truck. And then, at that point, everything would pretty much be paid for, and I don't really need a paycheck. So I'm looking at giving my paycheck back to the university and then just working, doing my job and serving the tribes for free. Personally, I know I'm batshit crazy. I think that's the only reason somebody would do a channel like this and the stuff I've done in my life. I mean, 100% of my VA rating is for my brain alone. So besides being crazy, I'm legitimately a jacked up person. I'm helplessly flawed. I'm imperfect for life. And I'm okay with that, right? I can live a good life in spite of that. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have a traumatic brain injury. Recently, they diagnosed me with severe depression. And I said, I don't have depression. And they said, yes, you do. And I said, well, I just don't want to go anywhere or do anything or talk to anybody. And they're like, well, that's depression. And I was like, so maybe I do have that. I've gaps in my memory sometimes. Or I have memory hiccups, I call them. Like a couple days ago, I was talking to a student, and he asked me about my coworker 2 doors down, and I could not remember that guy's name at all. And it wasn't like it was on the tip of my tongue. It was just like totally not there. So sometimes, stuff like that scares me. I don't like leaving my house. Work, groceries, grocery store, mom, and going to ceremonies. That's about it, I'm suicidal every single day. Most days I'm not, pull the trigger suicidal. I am thankful for every day I'm given, but I literally can't wait to go. You know, to me, I get to go meet my ancestors and I get to meet the Creator. So if there's a bus coming, I'm not just going to jump in front of that bus. But if there's a kid in front of that bus, I cannot wait to jump in front of that bus and save that kid. Like today's the day. Like I can't wait. Right? And to me, it's really weird that when your ancestors are waiting for you, and you finally get to go and meet the great mystery, you begin to wonder why everyone else doesn't want to die too. Like to me, that actually really blows my mind, and I mean, I seriously don't get it. So maybe that means I truly am crazy. I don't know. Compared to normal people, I'm probably very weird or boring. I have a ruthless mental diet, which means I severely limit the mental BS that enters my brain. I keep a lot of stupid stuff out. I definitely don't pay attention to any politics, or I don't study any religions. I haven't watched sports in probably 20 years. I really don't know much about celebrities or any of that kind of stuff. I don't watch news. I read the headlines, but I don't click on content ever. I stay way out of drama. I don't pay attention to Hollywood garbage, and I also don't pay attention to a lot of native BS that's out there too. I isolate a lot, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm watching Big Bang Theory for my fifth time all the way through right now because I love that show, and there's not so much else out there that's that, to me, that good a quality. I don't care about titles or positions or status. I don't even know what status means. I don't give a fuck about fancy pants, clothes, or material possessions or money. I'm completely the opposite of flashy. I'm low key. I'm quiet, plain, simple. I'm a work boots, jeans, t-shirt kind of guy. No logos, no labels. I definitely don't take selfies or get a lot of pictures taken of myself, I guess. I'm definitely not, going to go to a tanning booth so I can look more native or, I know natives who are literally dark, like the comedian George Lopez, and they go to tanning booths so they will not look white. I am not one of those guys, right? I could care less. I'm not going to dye my hair. I know people that will talk just like I'm talking to you right now, but as soon as they go over there, they'll put on a fake Raz accent, right? I'm 1,000% me, 1,000% of the time, and I don't know how to be anything else, and I'm not going to waste a second of my life or a drop of my energy to try to be anything for anybody. Or I don't even know why someone would do that. Like, to me, that just makes no sense. I don't own any. I own two pieces of native bling. I own a lanyard, a beaded lanyard that was given to me when I left Wisconsin Department of Veterans Affairs by the 12 tribes of Wisconsin. It's one of the things they gave me. But I wear my work keys on it, so all the beads are not falling off of it. And I own like a $5 wallet I got off of Amazon. The only army bling I own is I own this like coyote or sand colored kind of a salt pack, and that thing is freaking indestructible. Like I've had that thing for I don't know how many years, and it looks brand new. And that's what I carry my laptops in. Otherwise, I don't wear those shirts with the flags on the sleeve and the funny I'm a cool guy, or I'm a badass sayings on there. I don't wear none of that crap. I don't. There's nothing on my truck. There's nothing in my house. You walk around my house. There's nothing that would ever tell you I was ever in the military in any way. I threw out all my challenge coins. I first joined the Army. I was given a bunch of challenge coins because I did stuff, and my chain of command thought that was impressive or was above and beyond, so they gave me a challenge coin, and that meant something, right? But then, like, everybody started coming out with challenge coins, and they started handing them out like pennies. So I was like, well, these are freaking worthless now. So I just chucked all that shit. To me, all of that stuff is all inside. You know, I don't need to show it to anybody. Look, I've been out of the Army 8 years, about 8 years, and I can recite my oath of enlistment, the Soldier Creed, the NCO Creed, and the Ranger Creed by heart, just like that, from memory right now. That's one thing my memory will not forget. Those things I can drop right now. And that's because for my whole career, I saw those as the minimum standards for job performance in those roles. And I never did a single thing in my life to the minimum standard. Like, not even close, right? So I don't wear stuff to make a statement, you know. I know there are plenty of people out there who wear like Native Pride stuff or, you know, beaded stuff. And if that's you, that's totally cool. I mean, I totally get it and I appreciate it, but it's, you know, it's just not me. I'm not that guy. And I figure, you know, if I'm going to make a statement, you know, if I'm going to let you know who I am, I'm going to show it by showing up and whooping ass. That's how I make a statement. There are a ton of people who talk a big game in life, and you know, if you want to know who I am, all I would do is look at the scoreboard, because I score touchdowns. That's what I do, and I don't talk about it. So everything I do it because I want to do it or because people need help. I could care less about someone paying me a freaking dollar for it. I get my paycheck. I get a paycheck, and I earn a paycheck, and I earn VA disability, and that puts food on my table and gas in the truck and a roof overhead. And you know, what else do I need money for? You know, I mean, what am I going to buy? More socks? I mean, if you actually walked around my house, you'd see it's surprisingly empty. Like, I just don't have a lot of stuff. If I won the lottery, I don't even have a clue what I'd spend that money on. Like, I'd pay off the house, pay off the truck, and after that, I don't have a clue. You know, I'd give it all to tribes is probably what I'd do. Maybe buy a small fishing boat, maybe, but I'd have to leave the house. Maybe. I'd probably go fishing. People, you know, there are people who call me a minimalist. I lived out of 2 Army duffel bags for about 25 years of my life. One had Army clothes, one had civilian clothes, so for the most part. And so that's why I am the way I am, you know. So maybe I'm a minimalist. I had to watch some videos on YouTube to kind of figure out what that was, but maybe I am. I don't know. I don't, you know, buy much besides groceries. I'm not a shopper. I'm not a consumer. I don't know. I'm just not that guy either. I don't want anything or need anything in life. I got married later in life. My wife was Ho-Chunk in Grand Portage, Ojibwe. I became the overnight dad of 4 kids. I raised them for 10 years as if they were my own. Their biological dad never did anything for them, or barely any contact with them. My marriage fell apart pretty recently, and I got divorced. The older 3 are out of the house now, and with the divorce, I became an overnight single parent of my special needs stepson. So now I'll take care of him the rest of my life. My mom lives in independent living, and so my son and I go down there and help her out, usually 1 to 2 days per week. You know, help her get medication and food and whatever else she needs. I have 2 Ho-Chunk grandsons who are being raised by non-native foster parents, and they are fantastic people, that whole family. And so I love that family. And of course, I love those boys tremendously. and I try to mentor those boys as much as I can. So I love being around those people. Um, Believe it or not, I still try to work out, when I can. Uh, but I'm not a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of my former self. I do enjoy shooting when I can get out and get after it, but my days of running and gunning are long gone. There's all these gun guy videos, these tactical wannabe operator dudes out there, and you know, I, I those guys are all, I just don't have nothing to say to those guys. I'd rather shoot it than talk about it. So you know, guys come up to me and start talking about gear and triggers and all this kind of crap. It's like, to me, that just tells me you've probably never been in a gunfight in your life. So, you could spend all the time you want talking about range BS, but whatever, man. By far, my favorite thing to do in the entire world is to, I wake up at a ridiculously early hour every morning. So I go and I pray underneath the stars every morning when the rest of the world is asleep. And it's like super quiet, and I love that. It's my favorite thing to do in the entire world. I've always had a burning passion for learning my culture and traditional ways. Sometimes that's been obsessive. I'm not a big powwow guy anymore. If I do, I really like local community powwows. Like those ones where it's just like a couple drums from that area and a couple dancers from that area, and like the aunties and the grandmas, everyone chips in and makes some food for the feast. And there's not really any money involved. It's just community. Like, to me, that's a powwow. I don't go to contest powwows unless I'm really dragged there and someone's got to drag pretty hard to get me to go. It's just not me. It's too commercialized, and I realize there are a lot of people out there in Indian country who that's their bread and butter. They're professional dancers, and if that's you, hey, I applaud you, and I hope you make millions of dollars. You're the best in the world. But I just like those small community ones, and low key and quiet. It's just me. I also love, smoking the chanupa or the sacred pipe and sitting in a nipi or a sweat lodge. And so obviously, I'm alcohol and drug free. Those days are also way behind me. I'd rather watch sunset than a TV any day of the week. And I know this is going to sound totally crazy to next generation, but I could literally sit outside for hours and watch grass grow. Like, I know I probably am a total weirdo to you guys, but I just, I could watch paint peel. I just love being outside and watching nature. So, I studied sustainable architecture or eco building, whatever you want to call that, ever as a kind of a side hobby ever since high school, and so I'd love to start some kind of like off grid eco community earthship kind of thing. But as I get older, I think, well, I don't need as much technology, and now lately I've been thinking I don't even need electricity, and then even lately I've been thinking I don't even need people, like, so I don't know. I'm basically just a simple guy. I live a simple life. I'm same as everybody else out there, I guess. I'm just like every other guy. I'm no big deal. I'm nothing special. I'm more jacked up and crazy than most people. I'm Stephen Hawking ways to fuck up my life. I have done everything. Like yeah, I'm just a regular old dude. And now and now you definitely know more about me than anybody else does. So if you need help though, And if you really want to learn and connect, please come find me, and I will do my best to help you. Hol mataki esi.